I signed on the dotted line. I said to myself, I can do this. And when I committed to that year's program, everything in my life changed. So I didn't have a plan B. It wasn't something I could try. I had to make something work. At 43 years old, I had to get serious and I had to commit.
Welcome to the My SGV podcast. Our mission is to capture and share the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley. We believe our diversity is what makes the SGV great. And no matter where you're from in the San Gabriel Valley, you will feel welcome.
All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of My SGV podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another guest from right here in the San Gabriel Valley. If you are new here, we tell you the stories of the people from right here in the San Gabriel Valley. And if you are a returning listener, thank you for tuning in and stay tuned for another guest. Well, Tori, a name that people are like, oh, what happened to Scott? Right? So yeah, Tori is here. Scott is out. Scott is on his way to visit family. So Tori is filling in, but Tori is a big part of our show. In fact, she's part of the glue that keeps our show going. But, so today Tori's filling in for Scott in this pregame to our show. So I know Tori on a personal level, but also professionally. We work together, and I would say you experienced some coaching on some level, right, from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess this is like a natural conversation of like, how would you describe my coaching to you?
I would say it feels pretty natural. It's not like you go into a coaching mode or anything. It's just like conversation. You put in like wisdom and advice and things that can help me.
Coaching is my passion. I love coaching. I love all the various aspects of coaching, and I know I have my own style, and people have to be open to be coached, right? And I think that comes with relationship, because even if you're a good coach, but you can't get that information across, it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
So we have that relationship, and I'm always seeking to see where various pieces fit and how people can grow. I think those are two aspects of the way that I coach or see coaching, and I know that coaching varies. So have you ever pursued or have you had other coaches in your life before, Tori?
No, not really.
Sports?
No,
So no other coaching in your life besides me. Well, I guess parenting is sort of in a way coaching, right?
Yeah, it's probably mostly just parents. I did ballet, but I wouldn't really say that's coaching. It's kind of just class teaching.
Okay. So parents are also having to maintain connection and be able to influence and guide and correct and all that stuff. Certainly. So, well, if you're guessing, why we're going into this conversation today, it has to do with our guest also being a coach, amongst other things. He's also a hypnotherapist, and his name is Ted Moreno. Ted, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So the show is called the My SGV podcast. What is your connection to the San Gabriel Valley?
Well, I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley. I lived in East Los Angeles, which is kind of next to the San Gabriel Valley, but I went to school in Montebello. I now live in San Dimas, and I've spent most of my life in the San Gabriel Valley.
Interesting. You grew up in East Los Angeles.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You don't have the East Los Angeles dialect. Have you heard of that before?
Oh yeah, of course I have.
Yeah, like
Sure.
it's like a nationally recognized thing now.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what was it like growing up in East LA?
Well, it was, at the time as a kid, you don't really know anything different, but it was kind of dangerous at times. There was a lot of gang activity back then. A number of the guys that I went to school with got jumped by the rival high school. But for the most part, it was a pretty easygoing, mellow life. You just knew where you weren't supposed to go, and you watched over yourself. So there was some fear growing up. We had protective parents, so I really was kind of reined in and not allowed to go, roaming around the city. And so, to my parents' credit. But I went to Cantwell High School, which is a private Catholic boys' high school. So that was a good thing. And then I'm the oldest of 8 kids, so we all kind of took care of each other. And so we didn't have to go far because we had each other to hang out with and play with. So it was an interesting time to grow up in the kind of early 70s, and I don't think that time will ever come again, where you could jump on your bike, you could go riding, you could leave at 9 in the morning, be back at 5. Your parents had no clue where you were, as long as you came back in time for dinner, right? So certainly there wasn't that level of like being kidnapped, that level of fear I think that kids have today. So there's a lot more freedom, certainly in 74, 75, up to 78. Some of the best music that ever came out. I was learning to play guitar. That was great. I played guitar in the church group. I went to St. Alphonsus and Miraculous Metal, which is in Montebello in East LA. So, yeah, I have roots going deep into the San Gabriel Valley.
And you named a lot of places that I'm familiar with. Miraculous Metal is where my scout troop was at. And Cantwell Sacred Heart, used to play a lot of basketball there. So I know those places. But so you definitely grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, and you said you're one of 8.
Yes.
Where do you fall in line?
I'm the oldest.
Oh.
Oldest of 7 boys and 1 girl.
So you're the oldest. Wow. So what was life like being the oldest of, so many siblings?
Well, it came with responsibility and
unfair responsibility?
Well, probably. I was probably put into a parenting role, at an early age. I think I was in 6th grade when I had to be in charge of making sure the house was clean and everybody was okay when my folks came home from work. But it wasn't that big a deal, I think I would have rather have been the oldest than the youngest, so.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of sometimes ruled with an authoritarian fist, so.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you went to Cantwell Sacred Heart, and what was life like for you there?
Well, back then it was Cantwell, so Sacred Heart was a separate girls' school across the street.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Now it's co-ed, but back then it was a private boys' Catholic high school.
I see.
Yeah. Well, my dad went to Cantwell, and my mom went to Sacred Heart, so it was kind of the natural place for me to go. And it was good. It was a good experience. I joined the cross-country team and then ran track and gained some notoriety that way. And there was a lot of good guys that went to school there, and we were instilled with, good values, I think. So it was a good experience. It was fun, especially because I was involved in sports, which really made the difference. I was class president, and I was pretty involved.
So as I'm listening to people's story and journey, I'm always sort of looking for the thread that ties them into, what they're doing today. And I'm still sort of looking for that. You're describing this, at first growing up in East LA, it's a little bit rough, but your parents sort of had a good hold on your family and the kids. And then you're describing a really good situation at Cantwell, right? So what are some of the things that you look back and think may have formed, your path during those formative years?
I would say 2 things. Number 1, I think I was in my sophomore year of high school when I saw a crowd gathering, and I was like, what's going on over there? So I went over there, and in the middle of the crowd was a guy that was in my class, but he wasn't a real popular guy. He was a nice guy, but he wasn't certainly somebody that you would crowd around, right? So I went to go take a closer look, and he was hypnotizing somebody. So afterwards, I talked to him. I think his name was Daniel. I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm doing hypnosis on this person. I said, how did you learn that? He said, I checked a book out from the library. So I got the name of the book, and I checked out the book and started hypnotizing my brothers and my girlfriend. And the hypnotizing part was pretty easy, believe it or not. So I would, tell them stuff like, I'm going to pull you out of hypnosis. You're not going to remember anything I said until I snap my fingers. But up until that point, every time I say camera, you'll say click, and you won't know why. So, I'd pull them out of hypnosis, and I'd say, oh, you look interesting. I wish I had a camera. And they'd say click. And I'd be like, well, why did you say that? I don't know.
So you're messing with them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then I'd snap my fingers, and they're like, oh, I know what you did. And so that was fun for a while until I hypnotized my best buddy over the phone. And I guess he fell asleep. And I called back, and his mom answered the phone. I said, is Bob there? Oh, he's asleep on the floor. I said, can you wake him up? She couldn't wake him up. And I said, look, put the phone next to his ear. I think he's really deeply hypnotized. So she put the phone next to his ear, and I said, eyes open, wide awake. And he woke up, and she got very upset and said, don't ever do that again. Now, I don't know whether he was fooling around with me or if he was really hypnotized or fell asleep. But that kind of scared me, so I didn't do hypnosis until I was until I was 43 and in hypnotherapy school. But at least I had some familiarity with it, and I knew something about it.
Wow, that is fascinating. I never would have guessed that was sort of the genesis of this. You said you had 2 stories. Were both contained in that?
I think the other story was, I was always someone that was a good listener. So people would come to me for advice. I was always a fairly calm person, and I think people like and trust people that are calm rather than people bouncing off the wall. So I was always kind of a counselor, in the loose sense of the word. People would come to me and say, I don't know what to do about this. What do you think? And I'd give them some advice, and I think I enjoyed that, and I think people trusted me and my counsel.
Interesting. So there's a large gap there between, your friend who you hypnotized over the phone and what you said in your 40s that you were in hypnotherapy. So what happens next in your journey?
Yeah, that's the interesting part of the story. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So what happened was when I graduated, the only thing I really loved was music. So when I graduated from high school, I went to a college that is now gone. It's Immaculate Heart College. Used to be at the foot of Griffith Park. So I went there and I majored in music, and that was fun. I really enjoyed that, but I didn't have the maturity or discipline to really take it as far as I probably could have. So what happened was the college closed down the second year I was there. And I had a love affair with Arizona. So I moved to Arizona and I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona. This was my opportunity to kind of get away from my parents in a crowded house and achieve some independence. But I was very lost. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I really didn't know myself. I suffered from lack of confidence. I had some anxiety going on. So, I partied and just kind of eventually dropped out of college. I just didn't have the discipline or the self-esteem, I think, to put time and effort into myself because I had no vision. I had no reason to be there. I had no desire to do anything in particular. So I just started working. And I would say those were my lost years, just kind of drifting from job to job, relationship to relationship, not really, I was feeling bad about myself because I had dropped out of school. I had some self-esteem issues. And then I think it was when I was 30, I just turned 30. I was engaged to be married for a short time with a woman, and we broke up, and that was really devastating. That really brought me to my knees. But for me, it began my own personal self-development journey. I had to ask myself, I dated this woman for 3 or 4 months. Why am I so devastated? So I began to look at my own self-esteem issues, my own self-confidence issues. I began to take better care of myself. I began to work harder to support myself financially because I'd been broke the whole time. And slowly started to build myself up and have some self-esteem and self-confidence. And I began to become interested in human potential. That's when I started reading books like Wayne Dyer and Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I started to avail myself of this literature and became very interested, not only in human potential, but in spirituality generally as well. I started doing yoga, started meditating. Then I realized it was time to move back to Southern California. So when I was 40, I moved back to LA, got a job with a high school buddy who was working at Cal State Los Angeles. So I started working for him. But that wasn't a very fun job at all. It was an admin assistant job. And I became unhappier and unhappier and unhappier because I knew I wasn't where I needed to be. Then one day, fate intervened. I was at a point in my life where I was very desperate. I was looking for something meaningful to do, something important. I didn't want to get just any job. I knew I had more to offer, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was getting pretty desperate. By now, I'm, 43 years old. I'd met my wife-to-be, and I'm starting to ask myself, how am I going to support a family on this salary, or what am I going to do? And then one day, we were sent to a seminar called How to Be a Better Communicator. It was one of these one-day seminars that they hold in banquet rooms at hotels. So we went to the Disneyland Sheraton, and the person giving the seminar was probably the most amazing public speaker and presenter that I had ever experienced. She was really fabulous, had complete control over the material she was presenting. And she mentioned she was a hypnotherapist. So during a break, I spoke with her. I said, tell me more about this. She says, yeah, I'm an instructor at the Hypnosis Motivation Institute in Tarzana. And I told her, I said, yeah, I've seen the ads for that place, but I live in Sierra Madre, and that's really far from where I live, so I don't think I could drive out there. She said, well, you got to drive out there at least one time and visit the place. And I don't know if she gave me a hypnotic suggestion, but the next day, I went out and I visited the Hypnosis Motivation Institute. And I signed on the dotted line. I said to myself, I can do this. And when I committed to that year's program, everything in my life changed. So I didn't have a plan B. It wasn't something I could try. I had to make something work. At 43 years old, I had to get serious, and I had to commit. And that commitment for me made all the difference. Because from that point on, life started getting a lot better.
Wow, that's It's an interesting journey, and thank you for being so vulnerable and, sharing that. I'd like to go back if we can, because I'm interested in this part of your journey where you're doing some introspection and learning about yourself. Can you share what did you discover about either yourself or the things that formed you up to that point?
What I discovered was that I wasn't very good at standing up for myself. I wasn't good about asking for what I wanted or asking for what I needed. I was more of a keep the peace at any cost kind of guy. So consequently, if somebody wanted to do something and I didn't want to do it, I would be like, okay. I was just very passive, and I was afraid. The bottom line was just I was afraid. I lacked confidence, so I lacked the ability to take calculated risks. So I didn't want to fail. I was a little bit of a perfectionist too. So, if you have perfectionism, you just don't try anything. You don't start. Or you're constantly beating yourself up for trying something and it not being good enough. So what I discovered about myself was that it was okay to make mistakes, it was okay to fail, and that I could and should see what I could get out of life, demand even if I needed what I wanted, right? So I really learned to kind of stand up for myself, to communicate better, and to hold myself in higher esteem. And that was the biggest difference I have ever made in my life.
Ted, I have 2 follow-up questions to that. And I'm interested because it's a similar journey for myself that I've taken. So I just want to get your perspective on this. One question would be, did you discover an origin to that in your life? And 2, coming to an awareness is different than working through it and coming out the other end different. And what did that look like for you?
I think the awareness was that, I did grow up in a household with a lot of people. And I think my father, in order to maintain control of 7 boys and 1 girl, he was pretty strict and pretty rigid. And I think, he was stressed out and tense a lot of the times. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? Having to raise 8 kids on one salary, So, he had a tendency to be a little bit critical, and I took that very personally. So I think there was that part. Not only that, but I think genetically I'm just kind of a mellow, chill kind of person, and wasn't really good at standing up for myself. So I think there was that aspect, But of course, you can't blame your parents. Eventually, you have to take full responsibility, which I did when I developed the awareness that there were these issues. So I started to read. I took seminars. I put myself into psychotherapy and really started to work on making my life better. And what became really important to me was, what can I contribute? What can I give back? I realized that the reason for living is giving. And that became my guiding philosophy at that point.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think only in recent years have I learned that, just an awareness of it is not enough. You need to take action. You need to do something about it. You're not going to read your way or listen your way into change.
Yep, has happened in real time.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So you met this woman at this seminar. You go to I forget the name of the school.
Hypnosis Motivation Institute, HMI.
You sign on the dotted line, which I think you said was a year.
It was a year's program.
A year's program. So you're going through the program, and you're all in. This is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
Well, fortunately, my wife at the time had a good job, so I was able to work and go to school at the same time, and then eventually was able to quit my full-time job and do hypnotherapy full-time. And while I was building my practice, my wife was supporting us, and then eventually we had a child, and then another child, and then bought a house. So essentially, I just did what they told me to do as far as building a practice. Started going to Chamber of Commerce events, joined BNI, which is Business Networking International, started networking and sending out emails. I just did everything they told me to do. And slowly, I started public speaking, talking about hypnosis and hypnotherapy, and slowly just built a successful practice. So I've been doing this now for 20 years.
So I have a lot of questions about the practice itself, but before we get into that, so what's the biggest objection that you get when you're first introducing someone to hypnotherapy?
There aren't really objections because typically when somebody comes to me, they're ready to make a change. Now, I have to dispel misconceptions and help them understand what hypnosis is and what it isn't, because I think people bring a certain amount of fear and misconceptions to the process, so I help them understand what it is. But certainly if somebody is deathly afraid or totally against hypnosis or hypnotherapy, they're not going to be calling me.
I see. And when you go to like a chamber or a business networking event, like, so what are those questions? So these are not people who are seeking after your services, but you're introducing them to the idea. What are the things that they say? Because maybe my only introduction to it is what I see on TV or, a talk show where they, put out these people to sleep on a stage.
I think the most common question is, are you going to make me bark like a dog or quack like a duck? And I always say, no, I charge extra for that. Because the truth is, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. Hypnosis is a natural state that we all go into every single day of our lives. First thing in the morning, we're in hypnosis. Last thing at night. If you've ever had the experience of driving your car and missing your off-ramp because you were spacing out, that's a trance state. And there's very pleasant trance states, right? Putting on headphones, listening to music, becoming entranced by music or a movie. These are common everyday examples of hypnosis. So when you're in hypnosis, you're awake, you're aware, you're fully in control, but you are suggestible. And that really is the operative word. Hypnosis is a state of suggestibility, which means that your mind is more open to suggestion than it normally would be, so we can use the power of suggestion based on what you've told me you want to help you change your life.
So are you, in essence, like speaking to the subconscious?
Absolutely. That is fundamentally what we're doing.
So the fear is then for the person, like they have to be able to trust that you're not going to insert your own programming at that vulnerable time.
So when you're in hypnosis, you're awake. Hypnosis is not sleep. You're awake, aware, and fully in control. So if I was to start trying to put my own programming in there, the subject would say, why are you saying that? We're not working on that. And that's the talking part of our session. So a typical hypnotherapy session is an hour. The hypnosis part is really only about 15, 20 minutes. The rest of the time we're talking. What are your goals? What do you want? What do you think is holding you back? Give me a little bit of history. What do you think your subconscious mind needs to hear? I'm taking notes. I just feed it right back to them using my own style while they're in a hyper-suggestible state. So, I don't have any ability to make anybody do or say anything they don't want to do or say, and I certainly don't have any ability to control somebody. There is a level of trust that's needed, but I know how to build that trust, and I think people do trust me. I know people trust me. I know my clients trust me.
Ted, what is the difference between what you do and what people may have seen on a TV show?
What people see on a TV show would be called stage hypnosis. So that's entertainment. And that's real, but it's for entertainment. So, you're bringing people up on stage, you're asking for volunteers. So think about it. Somebody that goes to a hypnosis stage show is interested in hypnosis. So there's suggestibility already built in. Next, the person will ask for volunteers. So if somebody raises their hand, they want to be hypnotized. So the hypnotist will do some kind of test inductions, and anybody whose eyes are not getting heavy and blinking, he'll send back out into the audience. The hypnotist will end up with the most suggestible people on stage, the most hypnotizable people. So he can get him to do whatever he wants to do, and they want to do it because that's why they came. That's how that works.
I see. So I have a lot of questions about how it works, but we ask each guest to bring an item of significance with them. Ted, what did you bring with you today?
I brought my meditation cushion with me. So this is my meditation cushion, and so I've had this for many years. And one of the most powerful things I ever learned how to do was to sit down and calm my mind through meditation. So meditation helped me to connect with my essence, my truth, helped me to have better control over my mind, and helped me connect with what you might call the source or divinity, or what some people call God. So I think it's an incredibly beneficial modality. And if somebody out there is listening and they're overwhelmed or anxious or fearful, meditation's a good place to start to begin making those changes.
So I want to describe this for the listening audience who can't see it. It's a round cushion pillow. What kind of writing is this?
Sanskrit.
Sanskrit.
For Om.
Om. Okay. It's black and the writing is embroidered gold and red, but it's extremely heavy. Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Well, because it needs to maintain its shape. Otherwise, every day you sit on it, you don't want to start getting flatter and flatter and flatter.
Oh, you're sitting on this.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
You're sitting on it.
Okay. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for bringing that.
You're welcome.
So I want to go back to my questions about hypnosis. So that seems to suggest that only people who want to be hypnotized can be. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. You're not going to get hypnotized if you don't want to be.
I see. And in the people that I've come across who are trying to work through trauma or difficult things in their life, it seems like only at the end of many different modalities that they've tried, they come to hypnosis. Is that what you see also?
Yes. Typically people come to me and say, you're my last hope. I've tried everything else.
I see. And what are some of the things that they come to you for?
Most commonly it's anxiety, fear, phobias. Fear of driving is a big one.
Fear of driving.
Yeah.
People are afraid of driving.
Oh, yeah. Especially here in Southern California. Lots of fear of driving. Either fear of...
I'm shocked because that means that they're still driving. They're out there driving and they're afraid of driving.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You can look over at the car next to you. If somebody's moving real slow, you can tell from their body language that they're not having a good time driving down the freeway. Some people actually stop driving on the freeway, which puts a real crimp into your ability to get around, especially here in Southern California. And then some people just stop driving completely, which talk about a complete lack of independence. Now they got to rely on, friends and family members to drive them around. So it can be a real problem if you can't bring yourself to get in your car and drive.
Wow, I'm fascinated by that. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if that's a fear of, if it's a lack of control because they can't control everybody else?
That's part of it. There's also some claustrophobia, being kind of, boxed in, like in a freeway situation where you can't pull over. And then they begin to get what's called anticipatory anxiety. I'm afraid to drive because what if I go and drive and this happens? What if I start getting afraid? What if I freeze? What if I lose control? None of that ever happens. But people begin to get afraid of what might happen. What if I can't pull over to the side? What if there's no shoulder for me to pull over? Then what? What if I faint or throw up? Again, that never happens, but these are the fears people start to have.
Wow. Okay. So you started with saying some of the things that people go to you. So fear of driving, fear, anxiety, and what else?
Smoking cessation. People want to quit smoking, want to quit vaping, want to stop drinking, want to stop smoking so much weed. Those are some of the things people come to me. But also, and these are the people I really enjoy working with, are professional people that want to move their business or their personal lives to the next level, and they realize that something's holding them back. So people that are already doing well in life, but they want to get to the next level, and they realize maybe fear or lack of self-confidence is holding them back, or maybe they can't even identify. Sometimes they'll come to me and say, I'm doing great, but I know I could be doing better. I can't figure out why. Maybe they have procrastination or they're identifying some kind of self-sabotage. So I really enjoy working with those people because they're smart, they're sharp, they know how to invest in themselves, and they've already done some personal development work. Of course, they may have a lot of the other issues too. I'm not just saying, these people are people that have already done work on themselves. They're very enjoyable to work with, speak the same language.
Yeah. I'm really interested in speaking to the subconscious because every avenue that I've explored, tried, and doing, and continue to do to heal various things, I'm finding that seems to be the goal of various modalities. And if you can't do that, you see the thing reoccurring in your life, right? Because the subconscious takes over in that moment when you're not automatically thinking, oh, this is what I want to do. It just does it.
That's right.
So, yeah, I'm fascinated by that. And so are people aware that that's your goal? Do you let them know, like, this is what we're going to do with?
Absolutely. I tell them exactly what we're going to do, what it's going to feel like, how they can get the most benefit. I usually make a recording of the hypnosis part of the session so they can listen to it at home, continue to get the repetition and reinforcement. I'll suggest the use of affirmations. I'll give them homework. That's the coaching part. Do this for the next week, And people that are really willing to do the work get the results.
Do you have a story of a really bizarre, I would say behavior or something that someone came in with?
Yeah, well, there's a number of stories, but probably the most interesting one was the woman who brought her dog in and said her dog needed to be hypnotized. So I was quite taken aback. I didn't know what to say, but she was very insistent. She said, he needs you to hypnotize him. I said, well, what's his problem? He has a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. I just know, I feel it. He's scared. He's trembling all the time. I'm like, okay, well, what's his name? Skippy or something. Okay, well, why don't you get in the chair? I have a reclining chair. Why don't you put Skippy on your lap? So I went through and hypnotized Skippy, and Skippy got pretty relaxed. It, kind of lied down, and of course she closed her eyes. And then afterwards, she said, "Oh, I can tell he's so much different. He's feeling so much better. Thank you so much." And, it was her that needed it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. She got the benefit.
Wow.
But I don't really advertise for animals, so.
So say I'm a person, I've come to you and, I have this anxiety. You're sharing with me how the process works. And you said most of it is talking, and maybe 15 minutes of a session is actual hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
And what could I expect, or what's the duration of treatment? And I'm sure it varies with the person.
It does, but typically it's 4, 6, 12 sessions. Okay, it's not like something you have to do for a year, 2 years, right? It's considered a fairly brief therapy. Okay, so typically first thing I'll check in with is your self-care. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you getting any exercise? Because if you have anxiety and you're not really taking care of those things, it's not going to get any better, especially eating. Some people seem to think they don't need to eat, but when your blood sugar gets low, that can trigger anxiety. So that's the very first thing we'll do is we'll take care of the self-care stuff, right? Help them to sleep better. When you sleep at night, your mind has an opportunity to vent out anxieties and fears. If you're not getting good sleep, that's not happening. So I'll start with that. I'll have them come up with some positive self-talk, positive affirmations, okay? And then I'll have them talk specifically about the triggers that make them anxious. So what are the things in life that make you anxious? And then we'll address those things and devise some strategies. And then I'll put them in a hypnosis, and based on what we've talked, use the power of suggestion to begin to literally change their mind.
When I was doing manual therapy, I had various modalities to choose from. I wasn't, bound to one particular style. And I remember one of the instructors saying, you can't help everybody. Don't get so down on the ones that you can't, and don't get so high on the ones that you touch them and they're like, oh, I'm magically better. And is that similar in your experience?
Absolutely. In fact, when I was first starting out, I had a few clients. I went to my mentor and I told her, I said, look, I don't know if I could do this. She said, what's the problem? I said, how can I be responsible for these 5, 6 clients? How can I make sure that their lives turn out the way that they want to? I don't know if I can bear this responsibility. And she said, whoa, who do you think you are, God? They're not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to show up, do the best job that you can. The rest is up to them. And she made it clear to me, some people will take the ball and run with it. Others will get some results. Others won't get any results at all. She said, it's their responsibility. It's a partnership. You bring 100% of what you do, they have to bring 100% of what they do. And that was like a huge burden lifted off of me. So exactly what you said, it's the same thing.
I see. So when people find success, now do they come back to you and be like, Ted, I want to work on this other thing?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay. So they have some excitement, or they feel confident that this is a good modality for them.
Absolutely. They'll be like, yeah, you helped me so much with this other thing, this anxiety, and man, that really worked and it felt so great. Now I want to work on this thing right now. So when can I come in?
I see. Well, as a former smoker myself, I did consider hypnotherapy because I was like, I just can't quit. It was taking years, literally. I eventually did quit. I didn't go to hypnotherapy. But what is it that's keeping them, aside from the physical addiction, but what's keeping a smoker?
There's a number of things, but it's important to understand that people are smoking for a reason. They get something other than the nicotine hit. So some people may be smoking to fulfill a void that they have in their life. So maybe somebody died, right? Maybe their relationship fell apart. So they're using smoking to self-soothe, okay? Other people smoke to fit in. They're called identification smokers. So for instance, all their friends smoke and they don't want to be the only one that doesn't. So they keep smoking because they have a friend group and they all get to go outside in the middle of the day to smoke outside and have some, time together. And so there's a lot of reasons why people smoke, but they're trying to address some issue or challenge, and many of them don't even know what it is, really.
Interesting. I'd like to get your thoughts on PTSD. I believe that I experienced it, not diagnosed, but I had all the signs of it. And in working through that, I was at a point where I was going to seek therapy, and in researching it and looking at the success rate of common therapies, behavioral psychotherapy, it was fairly low. And this is coming from people who have experienced that therapy. Ultimately, what moved me in a direction to seeking my own help was this. I had a client whose son was in the military, and he experienced speaking to his friend in the morning and then watching him get blown up that afternoon. And then he said that when he went to therapy, nobody could tell him that they knew what he experienced. But when he went to group therapy and other soldiers were there, then he was looking in the eyes of other people who knew what he experienced. And that was so healing for him. So I had sought out other people who had experienced what I experienced. Sorry, that's sort of like a long roundabout way to come to hypnotherapy and PTSD. Yeah. So do you treat people with PTSD? I imagine you do.
I don't.
Oh, you
actually.
don't?
Not severe PTSD. You know, some people come and they're diagnosed with maybe a less severe form of PTSD. So I don't work a lot with people that have PTSD. And if I were going to advertise for that, I'd want to educate myself a lot more about PTSD. It is a very complex situation because that trauma is very much stored in the body. You can't really talk your way out of it. And certainly group therapy and having the experience and support of other people is so incredibly important. But I think the approach to PTSD has to be very somatic. You know, what do you feel in your body? Can you self-regulate when you're feeling anxious or triggered, you know? Which is why right now some of these breakthroughs in like psilocybin or other types of plant medicine are you know, gaining such interest because they seem to be very effective for PTSD and related type traumas. You know, psilocybin, otherwise known as magic mushrooms, doing a lot of research on using these on veterans with PTSD.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. You're familiar with somatic healing therapy?
Yes.
Peter Levine's work.
Yes.
And it's I guess like working through the trauma through your physical body experience, something like that.
Exactly. And it's very real time. What am I feeling in my body when I feel triggered? What can I do about it? How can I feel safe while feeling triggered? A lot of it is about self-regulation, being able to be with oneself instead of checking out or disassociating.
Interesting. Yeah. You know, I don't want to move so far away from hypnotherapy because that's your area of practice. But I want to come back to that. But let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
At Warmouth Law, they believe that just because you speak a foreign language, come from a different culture, or simply don't know how to navigate the legal system, that should not prevent you from compensation from injury or receiving benefits. Their multicultural staff have been helping SGVers like you for over 38 years. Visit law888.com or call them at 626-784-7017 and tell them you heard about them on this podcast.
All right, we're back with Ted. Ted, before the break, we were talking a little bit about somatic healing and PTSD. We're going to get back into your line of work, but we do this question thing after the break. And they're just an icebreaker sort of question. They're not very penetrating. It's just for the listener to get to know you and us a little bit better. Now, Tori's going to join in today too. So here we go. And you can choose not to answer if you don't want to. All right. You're at a cafe. What type of drink do you order?
At a cafe?
Yeah.
Well, if it's a cafe that serves alcohol, I'll have a glass of red wine.
Okay. Tori?
I would do some kind of tea. In Italy at their cafes, they had ginseng tea, and I really liked that. So I would order that all the time when we went to them.
A hot tea.
Ginseng?
Well, is it hot?
Yeah, it's hot.
It's hot. Okay. You know, I don't know what distinguishes a cafe. Do you know? I'm assuming they can have coffee and tea there, right?
Yeah.
So I probably would get a coffee beverage because I really like coffee and I really like the caffeine. So
I love coffee. So if I was there in the morning, I'd get coffee. If I was there in the evening, I'd get a glass of red wine.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for participating in that,
You're
Ted.
welcome.
So before the break, we were talking about PTSD and I think somatic healing. And you said you don't particularly take on severe PTSD. Oh, this was my question. I remember now. In other therapy professions, I think therapy for the therapist is almost mandatory. And do you get a lot of transference in your modality? And what do you do if you do?
Transference from the client.
That's right.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all that often, or at least not that I notice, right? But the times that it has happened, you know, I just address it directly. This is what's happening. You know, if you want, we can talk about this and examine this. This is common. You know, doesn't really mean anything. You know, we just address it right there in a very direct way and help people understand what they're feeling and what they're thinking. Because the transference can be positive. It can also be negative.
And do you take on some of their emotion, difficulty, stress?
Well, certainly as a hypnotherapist in private practice for 20 years, you learn not to do that. Sometimes I'll see 4 or 5 people in a day, and I need to maintain my own sanity. So no, I don't take that on. I can't take it on. It's not that I don't feel empathy. I do. And I would say most of my clients, I just really love my clients. The courage that it takes to put yourself into some kind of strange, unknown therapy that a lot of people aren't familiar with. It takes a lot of guts and courage. So I have a huge amount of respect for my clients. And sometimes when I hear their stories, it makes me sad. And sometimes I have to, maintain my own composure. But when the session is over, I leave my work at the office and I have to.
I see. Do you or have you experienced hypnotherapy yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure. Of course, many times.
So you have your own person that you go to?
Not currently, although a couple of years ago, I think it was during the pandemic, I went and sought out a hypnotherapist for a little bit.
I see. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Would someone seek out a hypnotherapist just for fun and curiosity? Do you get that?
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm sort of curious. I actually have always been curious whenever I first saw it on TV. Curious to know if it's real. I think that's what was my first curiosity. Yeah,
it's real.
I mean, I don't doubt that now. I think when I was younger and seeing people do strange things on TV, I'm trying to see it. Or, is this all staged or not? Or but I believe that the people who want to be can be, right?
Sure.
So now I'm interested in your journey. You say you've been a hypnotherapist for 20 years, right? And so along the way, you've certainly increased in skill and experience. And what about like new things in terms of business, social media? How are you reaching a new and younger, audience, or are you trying to do that?
Absolutely. And I have a coach. I have my own coach that I've had for a couple of years. And so this is where, like one of the things that I need to do is download TikTok and start making videos for TikTok. And I know nothing about that, so I'm going to hire my 16-year-old to help me do that.
Oh, okay.
She does it all the time, right? So yes, getting on TikTok. I already have a presence on Instagram, but learning to make more compelling videos, more targeted videos towards the people that I want to attract. So yeah, I'm learning all about that. I continue to read and educate myself about new modalities. I'm very interested in somatic type modalities. I just got a degree in mind-body applications for hypnotherapy that was offered by HMI. So, constant, never-ending improvement.
Wow. And I'm curious, how many clients can you handle at a certain time, and what's the average lifespan of a client? I know you said, sometimes it's 12 sessions at most, but some may last longer.
Yeah, so usually about 20 to 25 clients in a week. 25 clients in a week is a very busy week for me. The lifespan of the time they spend in therapy really does range, right? Some people come for 3 sessions. Most people typically 6 or 12 sessions. I have some clients that have been coming for 10 years. They come every month. They just like that ability to have a conversation, and they like the hypnosis and the recordings and all of that, So, there's a wide spectrum of time in therapy. Some people like the maintenance. They come regularly and have been coming for many years or many months. Other people just want to solve the problem and move on.
I see. Other than severe PTSD, are there other reasons why you may reject someone to take them on as a client?
I don't really. If somebody came to me with severe PTSD, I would take them on as a client. I would want to connect with their psychotherapist. They would have to be in psychotherapy. I would want to connect with their psychotherapist, find out what they're doing. So it would be kind of a team effort. I would not refuse somebody. The only time I would say no to somebody is if I thought that they had a mental illness that is undiagnosed. So that would be out of my scope. As a hypnotherapist, I am not licensed to treat mental disorders. So if somebody came to me and I thought that they had an undiagnosed mental disorder, I would have to tell them to go seek therapy from a licensed psychotherapist first, and then we would talk about it.
How many have you come across?
One, maybe.
One.
Yeah.
Because those are not like, you can't just draw blood and say, okay, you have this. You have to observe for a while.
Right, and I'm sure I have worked with people that are borderline, or other types of mental, and it does take 2 or 3 sessions to realize, but they typically self-terminate themselves. They typically don't come after 2 or 3 sessions.
So now that you've had this practice for 20 years and, you've sought out ways to not be this passive person, how are you sharing that, or do you share that knowledge with your kids so that they're not that passive person that you were?
Yeah, it's all about empowering people. I have 2 daughters, and they're totally empowered, right? Like they don't need me, man. If they want something, they'll ask for it. Certainly my younger one. So, they are very empowered young women, which is really gratifying to see. But certainly my job is to help people to feel empowered so that they can get the most out of life. I think it's possible to grow up feeling you have to hide out or shrink or be in the shadows, especially for people that come from immigrant families where, you just kind of want to fit in and not draw attention to yourself. So really, my job is to empower people and to help them understand that they can have a life worth living if they're willing to change the way they think, if they're willing to change their behaviors. So that's kind of the crux of it.
Interesting. I work also as a coach still now. The title is executive coach, but I really am helping people to empower them. And one of the examples I give, I say, I want you to be able to get to this place where when someone asks you, would you like to go to dinner on Thursday, that you could say no. And when they say, why not? You can say, well, I don't want to. And I say it just like that because it's a little bit funny, but they also laugh and they're like, oh, I can never say that. And I say, why? But that's really, if you can get there, sure, I may not say it in that way.
Right.
But if someone presses me, I may say, I just don't want to. And I'm okay with that. And I see in their face that they're like, I can't do that, but I wish that I could do that. And they're still saying yes to so many things that they wish they could say no to.
Yeah, that's a big problem because there are personalities out there and, good people, but they have forceful personalities. They are not afraid to ask for what they want or what they need. And, they can oftentimes make you feel guilty about not saying yes to what they want or what they need. So, I do a lot of work with people helping them to stand up to those personalities. That may be their mother, father, sister, brother, boss. But being able to draw boundaries is a very important part of what I do.
Well, you labeled that very gently. What did you say? Forceful personalities. That's a very gentle way of labeling those.
Strong personalities. And these are people that we love, people that we respect, people that we like. We don't want to say no to them, right? But we have to learn how to say, I know this is really important to you, but I can't go to dinner with you tonight. I have something I need to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Forceful personalities. Yeah, that's I said this to Scott the other day. I said, givers need to learn to set limits because takers don't have any.
Boy, that is true. That is true. And I think the hardest part is identifying whether you're a giver or a taker. I think we can both fall into both camps depending on the relationship.
Sure.
So having that awareness, am I giving, am I taking, and are they in balance? An important question to ask yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Ted, we're going to sort of move on to the final segment of the show where we get to know some things that you like to do in the San Gabriel Valley.
Okay.
Well, Ted, we call this segment the SGV3, and we get to know some of your favorite places or experiences in the San Gabriel Valley. So what would be number one? Number one
would be where I go every morning, which is Bonelli Park in San Dimas. It's right next door to Raging Waters. It's a reservoir, and it's just a beautiful lake. So I go out there every morning and I walk, and I have some music, and that's what keeps me sane, and that's what keeps me healthy, and that's my happy place. And it's a pretty big park, so there's lots of places you can go and explore, and there's wildlife out there, coyotes and eagles, and I haven't seen any deer out there, but it's a very quiet and peaceful place if you go early in the morning. So that would be number one. I really enjoy going there.
How early are we talking?
6:15 in the morning. I like to get out there,
Very peaceful, cool.
Oh, yeah. Peaceful, cool, quiet. My second place is the Huntington Botanical Gardens and Museum. So I love going there. I love, just walking around the gardens, like eating at the restaurant, having a glass of red wine, just really enjoy taking my family there. And we've been there numerous times, but, there's always something new to see. So that is really another place that I just love going to for some peace and tranquility. And then I would say number 3 would be anywhere in the San Gabriel Mountains, hiking in Monrovia, hiking in Pasadena. I just love hiking in those mountains, hiking from the trails in Sierra Madre where I used to live. It's just beautiful. Driving up to Chantry Flats in Santa Anita. Yeah, I love it.
Wonderful. The Huntington Library has definitely been a popular choice here, and also the San Gabriel Mountains. I noticed that you have all 3 in nature, so you really enjoy that, huh?
Very much so.
Do you know if Chantry is open again?
I don't.
I
don't. Monrovia Canyon Park was closed, and I just love that park, but I think it's getting ready to open again. Have you ever been there?
I have not. I understand there's you can park and just, well, of course you can park everywhere, but I've seen some photos of it. It's covered, really well covered.
Yeah,
is that right?
There's 3 levels. It's really pretty and well kept, and it requires a donation to get in. So there's an envelope. You put $5 in there.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's well kept.
Are you I'm trying to figure out what kind of hiker you are. So do you go from Chantry to Wilson? Are you that kind of hiker?
I have hiked to Mount Wilson. It's been a long time, but I would say that I'm a seasoned hiker. I'm in pretty good shape.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Do you know where that view is from? Can you see that picture?
Could be from anywhere in the San Gabriel Mountains, yeah.
So I think over to the left, that's Griffith Observatory. But that's a hike that Scott and I do pretty regularly. I think we've done that maybe over 300 times.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So where is that? Is that in Santa Susana Mountains, up by Malibu? Or?
It's at the top of Lake.
Oh, okay. All right.
So the Cobb Estate is right there. You go to the east, and that's Echo Mountain. There's a well-groomed trail. And from the Cobb Estate, right at the corner there where you start, if you go straight up, there are some stairs, and then you reach a bench, and then it goes straight up. No switchbacks. So you're just going really just straight up the mountain. 0.69 miles, 1,114 feet of gain.
Wow. And it's at the end of Lake?
It is, yeah.
I'll have to check it out. I think I've been there once, but it's been a long time.
Well, if you ever want to go, Scott and I will go with you. Yeah.
You got a deal.
Yeah, so only one person, I think, has ever gone back with us after having gone.
Okay, sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, it's very challenging, but we love it, because it never gets easy. It's always very, very hard, very, very hard. And so every time you complete it, it takes us half an hour to get it to the top, but it just feels wonderful,
I'll put that on my list of things to do. I'll be in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're more than welcome to join us.
Awesome.
We usually go in the morning, sunrise.
Yeah, sure. Perfect.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us and giving us this look into hypnotherapy. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
The best thing to do is go to tedmoreno.com, click on the contact menu, send me a little email, and I'll get back in touch ASAP. People can connect with me through social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of the usual social media suspects. And I have a podcast, my own podcast.
Oh, okay.
It's called Ted in Your Head. And you can access it at tedinyourhead.com. So, maybe I'll have you on my podcast.
Yeah. Well, quick, what is your podcast about?
It's about the things we've been talking about, right? So talking about anxiety, talking about how to be empowered. I have I think I'm at episode 420 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So,
congratulations. Wow,
you.
That's quite the feat.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Wow.
So it's all about, how to live your life in a powerful and empowering way, and how to release limiting thoughts, beliefs, and feelings.
Wow. Ted in Your Head.
Ted in Your Head.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to be on the show. I'd love to check it out too. 400, that's no easy feat. And we know. So I think we're barely over 100. So yeah, quite the accomplishment.
Well, this is a really nice setup that you have here, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's been quite the pleasure. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
I really enjoyed talking with you too, Ted. Thank you so much. Well, there you go. There's another episode for you. I hope you enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed this. I never would have guessed that we would have this opportunity to speak with someone in this field, and I hope you learned something. I certainly did. Don't forget to check out his podcast, Ted in Your Head. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can check out our full back catalog on our website, mysgv.net. And until next week, we'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us on the MySGV podcast. Check out more of our content on our website, mysgv.net. This show was produced by Russell Moreno and edited by Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. If you'd like to join us next week as we capture and share more stories from our diverse community, feel welcome.
Nice mother. No, kind mother.